Good evening, Professor Yogesh.
Good evening, Amit. How are you?
I am fine, sir. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. Paul is not here, right, yet?
Yeah, yet not. Should I remind?
Okay, let me just send him a quick message so that.
Right. अच्छा अच्छा
Hi, Paul. We are now online, yeah? For the talk. No, that's 5 o'clock Indian time, right? Yeah. Okay, sorry. Thank you. Okay, bye. So he was thinking that it's 5 o'clock UK time.
Okay.
But he's joining very soon.
Yes. We are waiting for him, and then we will start the session in another 1-2 minutes. Sir.
Yeah, sure.
Very kind of you, sir, for your consent to be here and give your valuable input, especially young researcher like us.
Oh, that's okay, Amit, as long as it's not too onerous, it's not too much of time taken, it's okay to do it. Paul is here, so yeah, we are all
Hello,
set.
Professor Paul, how are you?
I am good, thank you.
I welcome you in this Editor's Talk series.
Thank you. I'm just having a little problem with my laptop. I'll be 2 minutes and I'll be back with you, okay?
Sure. We are waiting for you, Professor.
So, Amit, IMV is a relatively new IM, right?
So B is the third generation IM, sir. So we have first generation IMs like IM A, B, C, L, K, I. Then second generation IMs came in, and in 2016 we have established third generation IM. IM Visakhapatnam, IM Sambhalpur, IM Jammu, IM Bodh Gaya. So these third generation IMs we are.
Okay.
So now total 20 IMs are there, sir, in India.
No, I know. I'm fully aware. But obviously I didn't know much about IMV before. So, but nowadays I have started hearing about IMV more and more, word of mouth and electronic presence I can see. So, yeah.
Yes, and we look forward for your support, sir, in our presence in the other domain, also in research domain, and how we can collaborate with you and your institute, so we can together do something.
Yeah, we'll see. I think Paul is okay now.
Yeah, 2 secs. I've just had to reboot my reboot my laptop, and I've just lost my link to my presentation, so it will be a sec.
Okay.
So apologies for that.
So till the time, should I?
Also, sorry, I will also be sharing slide. So after Paul finished, then I will share my slide, and then
Yogesh, do you want to go first, and then I'll jump in after you?
I'm happy to do that, Paul.
Thank you, Yogesh.
If you're okay. Okay, Amit.
So I will just start the session, sir, with your permission. And first, I will tell you that how this started, Editor's Talk started. So we give the name called Shodh Sambad, which the Hindi word Shodh means research and Sambad means communication. So the idea is that one editor is everything. He is editor, he is a reviewer, and he is the researcher. So he has all three experience. who is submitting the paper somewhere, who is reviewing the paper, and who is also editing the paper. Means as an editor, he is seeing that this paper is fit to that particular journal or not. So according to our view, editor is the best person to tell the whole story, because as a researcher, I don't know what editor is thinking. At reviewer, I don't know what editor is thinking. Editor, if he or she is not submitting paper, he can't tell the total story. So I think you people are the right person to tell the whole story of the research, that what should be the research journey. And with this idea, we have started our edited talk series. And we are honored that we have Professor Yogesh Dwivedi and Professor Paul Jones, and everyone is knowing you, sir, in research arena because of your research credential. So I will just give a brief intro of this our esteemed guest, and then our admin academics and research coordinator will talk about IIM Visakhapatnam, short introduction about IIM Visakhapatnam. So Professor Paul Jones is Professor of Entrepreneurship and Innovation and Head of the Business Department in the School of Management, Swansea University, UK. He is also a Senior Fellow of the Higher Education Academy and Board Member of the Institute of Small Business and Entrepreneurship. Previously held senior positions and academic posts at Coventry University, Plymouth University, and the University of South Wales. He is also editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Entrepreneurial Behavior and Research. This journal is having site score of 6.3, current site score 2020 site score, and impact factor is 3.29, to be very precise. He is also associate editor of International Journal of Management Education and series editor of the Serious Contemporary Issues in Entrepreneur Research. In addition, Jones has guest edited 20 special issues in his career to date. Jones undertakes research into entrepreneurship behavior and small business management, and he widely published in journals such as Omega, Entrepreneurship and Regional Development, International Small Business Journal, and Journal of Small Business Management. I will take short, I have taken the help of Google Scholar to know about research credential of Paul Jones, and Google Scholar is saying that he has published 239 papers, and total citation got 3,904, H index having 32 and H10 index is 80. So he can share how we can be like him in the research domain. Our second chief guest is Professor Yogesh Dwivedi. He is Professor of Digital Marketing and Innovation, founding director of the Emerging Market Research Center, and co-director of research at the School of Management, Swansea University, Wales, UK. Professor Dwivedi is also currently leading the International Journal of Information Management, one of the leading journal of information system. He is editor-in-chief of that journal. When we talk about the Journal of Information Management, site score 14.1 and impact factor very precise 8.210. His research interests are at the interface of information system and marketing, focusing on the issue related to consumer adoption and diffusion of emerging digital innovation, digital government, and digital and social media marketing, particularly in the context of emerging market. Professor Dwivedi is an associate editor of Journal of Business Research, JBR, European Journal of Marketing, Government Information Quarterly, and International Journal of Electronic Government Research. He is also senior editor at the Journal of Electronic Commerce and Research. When we talk about credential of Yogesh Dwivedi, everyone is knowing that Professor Dwivedi has published 642 papers according to Google Scholar, and currently today, it's the to-date data, he is having 24,596 citation on Google Scholar. H index is 84 and I-10 index is 306, and it's a continuous growing. So every day he is adding something in I-10 index and something in paper and citation. So I will welcome both Professor Jones and Professor Dwivedi, and I hope that we will learn today a lot that how we can be researcher like you. Thank you, sir, for your consent to sharing your valuable view on this editor talk series. Again, thank you very much, sir. Now, before welcoming Professor Dwivedi to share his presentation, I would like to welcome our coordinator, academics and research, Professor Amit Baran Chakravarti, to just welcome the chief guests and talk something about IIM Visakhapatnam. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Professor Amit. I take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Jones and Dr. Dwivedi to this platform. thank you for joining us in this first editor talk organized by IIM Visakhapatnam. Brief background of our institute. We are a publicly funded institute based on the Eastern Seaboard of India. The term IIM, or Indian Institute of Management, is an umbrella brand given to a set of 20 business schools spread across India. Each of these 20 institutes is autonomous in itself. These 20 institutes are among the most management institutes in India. And based on one of the Government of India's legislations, these institutes have been declared as institutes of national importance. Around 200,000 students apply for admissions to these institutes, out of which only about 10,000 get admission to these 20 institutes. Our institute, that is IIMV, is relatively young, about 5 years old. And being a young institute, we are highly entrepreneurial and ambitious. We have a young whole 30 faculty who are all very active in research. And we have plans to increase our faculty in the coming 5 to 10 years. We are actively pursuing international accreditations, ASCP and EQUIS. As such, we are on the lookout for international partnerships with like-minded institutes. I would request both Dr. Jones and Dr. Dwivedi to guide us on how we can increase our engagement with your journal as well as your respective institutes. We definitely look forward to publishing more in your journals. Still, at the same time, we would like to explore the possibilities of getting involved, maybe as reviewers or even as special issue guest editors for your esteemed publications. With these few words, I once again welcome both Dr. Jones and Dr. Dwivedi to this session. The next time you're visiting India, please do drop by at Vizag. We will be honored to host you at our institute. And we have sunny skies 365 days a year, just like the background in Yogesh's screenshot. So I'm sure you'll love it over here. And I would also like to thank Professor Amit Shankar for organizing this event. Over to you, Professor Amit.
Yes, thank you, Professor Amit, for introduction of the IMV. Now I would like to welcome Professor Yogesh Dwivedi to put some light on how we can be researcher like him. Professor, over to you.
Paul, is it? Are you still okay for me to go ahead, or?
Yes, fine, Yogesh. I'm okay though, but yeah, you carry on, and then I'll catch up after you.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Let me share the slide, and then. Can everyone see?
Yes, sir. It's visible. It's visible, sir.
So thank you very much, Dr. Amit Shankar and Dr. Amit Chakravarti, for your warm and pleasant welcome. And obviously, hello to I think it's afternoon there. So good afternoon to everyone in India, in Vizag. It's nice to be here. Pleasure to share what we can share, actually. I'm not sure if we can tell how we are in 15 minutes, but I will reflect very quickly what I think why many submissions doesn't really pass through desk screening, or even if that passed through the desk screening, then why they get rejected later on. And that will be very brief because I have 15 minutes, yeah? So, so as I think I have already been introduced, so I'm not going to talk more about it, but here is a little bit more about a journal that I lead, which is International Journal of Information Management. As you can see, the matrix is there. The impact factor is 8.2, ranked A-star in ABDC, and #1 based on impact factor ranking in Web of Science. So, submission rate is very, very high. We get about 2,000 submissions per year. You can already see since 1st Jan, we already have 550 submissions, I have processed. So you can imagine the level of pressure editors has in terms of screening the best of the best, actually, to process further. They cannot put everything in review process. If they do, they will not able to cope with the requirement of reviewers. So we have to take very hard approach in terms of reducing the number of papers that then forwarded to reviewers. Acceptance rate overall 10 to 15% for IJIM. So again, imagine out of 2,000, 10 to 15%. So, very, very low percentage, but that's important to maintain the, reputation and credibility of the journal. You can see the review process in terms of it takes 7 to 10 days for desk screening. So if you submit today, within 10 days, if it's not good enough, you will receive the decision. It takes, and if it goes further to reviewers, then it may take 1 to 4 months to get first round of revision. And generally, submissions goes through 2 to 5 review cycles. It all depends upon how authors are responding to the reviewers' comments and how they're improving their work through revision process. Each submissions get reviewed at least by 2 reviewers and max by 4 reviewers. So 2 to 4 reviewers review the submissions in each cycle. So this is just a little about the journal. You can see the readership here, downloads. Actually, I put this from since like few months before, but more or less it should be similar. So you can see the readership fairly distributed across continent and across different country, and it is quite substantial, in terms of downloads. So that's just a little about journal. I wouldn't waste too much time talking about other things because time is limited. So I would talk about directly what makes me as editor to reject papers, basically from desk screening, and what I have seen reviewer actually, taking approach to reject the paper. There are various things. Obviously, this is very abstract. So, please take this in the way I'm saying, in abstract way. I can elaborate each of these in much detail, but much longer session will be needed. But these are in essence my experience as an editor and as well as an author. So I would have got more than 300 journal articles, and some of these always is the reason when I get rejections from desk or rejection after review. Okay, so the first and foremost issue is a lack of fit alignment and familiarity with the journal. Yeah, so when I receive the submission, first thing I see, is this anything to do with my journal? Or if author is at all aware about this journal, has they made any effort to look at what is published in the journal and try to connect their work with what is published already in journal? And if I don't see the evidence of that, then those submissions, the most likely to be rejected, even if they are good submissions, even if they have a strong rigor and a strong contribution. I would not like to have a paper that does not very well fit in my journal. So, and this is somehow authors take it granted. They think that anything they submit will be processed, and that doesn't happen. Most of the journal, I think most of you would have submitted many papers, and you would definitely have come across this comment that this work does not fit to this journal. Sometimes editors elaborate this little bit more, the reason, and sometimes they just simply say it does not fit and they pass on. And what that means that you have made no effort to really look at how your work correspond to the work that already published in journal. So if you can ensure that, if you can ensure this aspect, you can actually reduce 50% chances of being desk rejected, actually. So that's the one reason. Not very well structured and very well written submission. We all read papers as an author, as a reviewer, as an editor, but still, often we try to structure a submission the way we want, the way we think is appropriate. No, that doesn't work. What you think does not much matters. What actually accepted norm according to journal or according to area, that is what you need to do, not what you feel that, okay, this is how I would like to structure, and therefore this is my structure and let's do it in that way. It doesn't work in that way. You really need to look at the journal, you need to look at the papers published recently in last few years, see how majority of papers are structured, how they have made their argument in different sections, how they presented content. And if you want to actually succeed in top journals, that is the most important things to do. And I will show few standard structure later on in subsequent slides. Then the third important aspect is lack of novelty and timeliness, both in terms of topic as well as in terms of theory or models that you're using. So topical nature is very, very important. If the work is not current, it's not going to go anywhere because relevance is not there. It won't bring any benefit to journal. No other people will be, researching and publishing work on that, so it won't be cited. So novelty and timeliness of topic is very important, but at the same time, theory as well. So I give example. You might be studying a emerging technology, adoption of emerging technology. That is a current topic, fine, but you are using TAM, technology acceptance model. Now, technology acceptance model is a dated model. It has been used and used and used so many times. Thousands and thousands of studies has tested it. Now, nothing more new you're going to bring into that. So if you examining a current topic using old theory or dated theory, it's not going to work, simple. So, and that is the reason for many rejection of many papers, at least in my experience as an editor in several journals. And then if you pass through the lack of novelty, timeliness, structure, and writing aspect, then comes to rigor. How well you have done your research, how well you have presented your research, how well you have written your literature review. Are you clearly and succinctly bringing showing the research gap or not? Have you really formulated your hypothesis thoughtfully? Means you have provided really good discussion on hypothesis to support it, or you simply listed it. And if it's a qualitative work, in qualitative work, you're not building hypothesis, but at the back end, have you built some theory? If you haven't, it least likely will go through. Method, your sample, your sample size, sampling technique, your from where you collected data, how you collected data, all that information is there, and is it adequate according to threshold recommended by literature or not? And if not, then you can imagine that things wouldn't go very well. Have you analyzed your results very well? Sometimes you have good data, but analysis is really poor. And at the same time, you may have analyzed, but many submissions, they present the result, but then they very abruptly in the paper by simply presenting conclusion or very short discussion. And that is the weakest part of paper I would consider when you don't have proper discussion, to include in your paper. So all that actually is the region, but those regions are mainly when paper goes in review process, when reviewer scrutinize everything in detail, then they bring out those shortcomings. They, if it's addressable, they give opportunity to address, means opportunity to revise, and if it's not, they recommend rejections. Also, when they give you opportunity to revise, some authors actually put all their weight, they put all their effort to address those issues, and they succeed. Some authors actually do superficial revisions, and what happens? They get rejected at second or third round. And it happens quite often that don't think if you've gone through one round, you will succeed. You may not succeed if you are not putting the effort that is required to do the revision. All of those actually, if not good, then you're unlikely to have sufficient contribution, which is again another very common reason given for desk rejection, that your work does not have sufficient contribution. That might be due to lack of novelty, might be due to lack of relevance, might be due to novelty in theory or theory development, might be your method is flawed or weak. Any of those things actually can lead to insufficient contribution and therefore problem in terms of success of your submission. As I mentioned, many authors actually take time to do the revision and respond to reviewers' comments very well. But some authors also get very offended by reviewers' comments, and they either don't respond them properly, or they respond reviewers in very rude manner, in very aggressive manner, and that doesn't really help. It doesn't. Regardless whatever authors thinks, they have to convince reviewer that their work is good and appropriate and is making sufficient contribution. And you cannot do this by arguing reviewers, because they can always come out with new argument to trouble you further. So it's better to provide a logical and convincing argument. And if you're not actually at all convinced with their suggestions or comments, provide polite response, a logical and polite response, not aggressive response, which wouldn't help. Also, another thing I think that may actually cause problem, not directly but indirectly, is a lack of your integration in scholarly community. So many of us thinks that, oh, let's just write journal articles. I don't have to review. So review invitation goes to you, you decline simply, decline and decline and decline. 10 times you decline, you have really history of one who doesn't want to cooperate. And nowadays it's everything transparent. If I click name of the reviewer, I can see how many invitation has gone to that reviewer, how many invitation they have accepted, how many they have actually submitted on time review, and how many they didn't submit. So I can see whole history just in one click. And that actually create an image. If you're not able to contribute to the community, why you think you deserve to publish? As an editor, I feel that is just not fair with other reviewers and other authors. So those, and also not participating in the conferences. Conferences is more about you getting to know what people expect, how people think in your area, how people actually create an argument. All that actually can learn through the participation in conferences. But often many of us don't actually participate in conferences. So I think those can also be some reason not to succeed in good journal or strong journal. And also, participation in conferences can help you to network, help you to meet those people who are relevant to your work. So all that actually kind of, I think I'm running out of time. So this is just very, very nutshell why paper get rejected. But here you see, I have provided a view which you may have read. So it's given by editor of past editor of European Journal of Marketing, Nick Lee. Yeah. So what he said, good research does not always make a good manuscript. And at the same time, an average research, if written well, can be actually successful manuscript. It can be accepted. So it's not really, if you think you have collected this much data and you have used this much technique, but if you have these advanced technique, but if you don't really present it well, those papers get even desk rejected. Forget the rejection after the review. So you can see that it's very important not to do the really good research, but also to write that very well in order to succeed. And also often when your paper is rejected, that's not actually reflection on your credibility as a researcher, but actually the rejection is done on the work that you have presented on that paper. Okay, so it's all about the work that you are submitting, not about you or your co-author. Your co-author can be very prominent. You might be very prominent, but it may not succeed if the work is not properly presented. And properly, when I say according to journal, according to editor's expectation, if it's not presented, then it will lead to rejection, regardless how good quality research you have done. Now, we often read the papers, but still we miss out some or other aspect of the article. I always say consider journal style that you want to target. Look at their paper and see what sections, elements they have, and use that as kind of template for yourself to prepare your paper. But you can see here a general kind of template. If you follow that, you can't go wrong. You have covered everything. Most of the time people mix up literature review with hypothesis development. I would always recommend to keep them separate because they have different purpose to serve. And same time, people either don't include discussion or don't include conclusion. Again, they have their own purpose to serve. So make sure that these things are there. And this is for survey-based kind of quantitative paper. Now you look at case study, like qualitative paper, case study based. Now, in qualitative paper, what I often see, everything is there, but the most important part is missing, which is actual theory building. You presented all your quotes and your result, that's fine, but that doesn't mean alone if you don't go beyond, reflect upon what you have found in your result, and come out with some kind of propositions or framework or conceptual model in your discussion section. That is the most important part in your qualitative paper. If not there, then that paper has no value for me. Doesn't matter how good result you have presented. Overall aim is to advance the knowledge, existing knowledge. And if you're just presenting result and not taking it beyond, then it's not sufficient. So this is kind of tentative structure for qualitative paper. And then you have literature. Lots of paper I receive that is literature review. And what people do, they either present all these descriptive statistics, how many journals, how many authors, how many this, how many that, or they simply describe the results. That's fine, you can describe the results, but that alone is not sufficient. If your literature review not leading to identifying some kind of theoretical gap, proposing some kind of framework or model, or building some research proposition, then that literature review is not good enough to go in good journal. Simple. You can see the quote from editor as well, but most of the editor, if you talk to them, they will echo this point. Your literature review need to show something unique, not that it just analyze what is there. Okay, so that's basically literature review paper. Another kind of things that nowadays you see lots of submission coming is meta-analysis. Now, meta-analysis, they think that bibliometric many times I see misconception. People think that if they have done bibliometric analysis, that is a meta-analysis. No, it's not meta-analysis. Meta-analysis means you are looking at their quant values and you are actually working out some effect sizes and creating cumulative result actually based on existing result. So that is meta-analysis, and meta-analysis papers should follow the same structure as I have seen the quant-based survey papers. They're not different. You still have to formulate relationships. Based on those relationships, you work out your methodology and data collection strategy, and then do the meta-analysis. And nowadays, actually, meta-analysis alone not sufficient. You have to go beyond. You have to do, after meta-analysis, you have use that data to conduct either structured question modeling or meta-regression or something like that, in order to convince top journals that, look, you have brought something novel to the table. And if you don't do, it's unlikely to succeed. And there is a guidance paper that is written very recently on meta-analysis. I have provided the reference for that here. That actually talk about various aspects of meta-analysis and what you need to really worry about when you are preparing a meta-analysis paper. So that's that. But 2 minutes more and then I will end. I know I'm taking Paul's time. One should read enough before starting to write. That's a very important thing. What is happening nowadays, actually, especially for young scholars, that they may not even have read 5 papers on the topic that they are examining, and they want to write a paper for a star journal. No, it's not going to happen. You write, you read and read and read. You have to know the domain very well in order to craft the argument that can convince reviewer and editor. If you have not read, then it's not going to happen. One of the Hindi author, I don't know if you writer, most of you probably know Manoj Muntasir, who writes for Bollywood as well. So he says, when you read 2,000 pages, then you have right to write 2 lines. So you need to read 2,000 pages, and then you can write 2 lines very well. And that is missing somehow with new scholars. It's very important that people actually start reading very well. One thing you must do regularly, read 1 paper every day if possible. If not possible, read at least 2-3 papers every week to keep yourself updated, to be aware how research is evolving in your area. And then only you will be able to do justice to your research. So reading in journal is very important, but also knowing your journal, literature in the journal that you're going to submit is even more important, because if it's not reflected that his paper is prepared for your journal, for that journal, then it's not going to succeed. Other problem is that people get rejected from one journal and in hasty, they submit to another journal without doing anything. So that Nick said, it's not, I'm not really, it's passing the message to editor, I'm not really interested in your journal. If you simply submitting a paper without preparation, that means you just want publication. You don't have any interest in journal or don't want to do anything with that journal. So that's again not going to help. Review articles if you can. I suggest that if you receive invitation, please review articles, because it's not just that you're showing your presence, but also you are getting to know what is expected by the journal. But when journals reject the paper, you get all the reviews, comments, and it gives you idea that what actually in journal people are expecting from publication in those journals. If you get opportunity in conferences and various places, if you find a person who have written well and written a lot in your area in conferences, don't hesitate to buy a coffee to that for that person. Go ask politely, can I buy a coffee for you? You know, and if they have few minutes time, often they say, fine, let's go and have a coffee. And they like to have discussion. So if you get that opportunity, avail that, get to know how they think, what they think, and learn about their strategy, you know. And if you want to publish, you have to write. So as I said, reading is very important. Some people actually quite opposite, you know, so they read a lot, but they never want to write anything. You have to write in order to publish, and don't be afraid to be rejected. Rejection is part of our life. If anything is true in academics life, that is rejection. Rejection, rejection, rejection. So don't be afraid. Fine, it will be rejected, but it will be accepted somewhere else. That's okay. But if you don't try, nothing going to happen. Often you receive R&R, you know, revise and resubmit. People think, oh, R&R is kind of rejection. No, for top journal, getting R&R is really important. You don't give up that opportunity. Don't think that is a rejection. Do your best and resubmit. Those, if you do the effort, often you will succeed. Trust me. So don't give up on R&R. Okay. Reviewers are generally right. So don't argue with them. Just do what they say. As I said, if you think it's really, the person has not understood at all, put across your point politely, not in an aggressive way. If your paper have never been rejected, that's another point. If it's never been rejected, that means, what that means, you're not targeting good enough journal. That is the point. So if you keep submitting in similar type of journal, keep getting the acceptance after revision, that means you should try better journal in order to go and get little more challenge. Okay? And when rejected, as I mentioned before, when rejected, don't submit the same paper without revising anything to a different journal. Make sure that you align your work with journal, spend half a day or few hours and make appropriate changes before submitting elsewhere. You know, otherwise you get rejected and lose the opportunity with that journal as well. And then you read this quote, and with that I will end. Yeah, even those who you and I may think are amazingly successful in the publication process had many failures for each one of their great publications. Even more important is that this failure does not ever really stop. No matter, you know, how well you have published, you get rejections still, you know, for new submissions. So regardless what your position is, how many papers you have published, you know, I get rejections often. Still, I get rejections often, regardless how many papers I have published. You know, because the whole system is as such, designed as such, that you know, regardless who you are, things will come to you. You know, so don't feel. I often see on social media and people say, oh, you know, nobody knows me and that's why I'm getting rejected. No, it's not the case. Everyone gets rejected. It's just that not everyone talking about that on social media or elsewhere where people hear. We all feel the heat of the process, and that should be taken in constructive manner. Arguing editors, arguing reviewers, arguing other stakeholder in ecosystem is not helpful, because, you know, when they made a decision, they made a decision for some reason. They're not going to change that decision. So, you know, you receive a decision and immediately you fire back an email, that's taking your time, precious time, and not helping you at all. So I would say, take the rejection in constructive way and improve your work in the way that it succeeds then subsequently. Thank you very much. I will obviously answer any question afterwards, but now it's Paul's turn.
Thank you, Professor Dwivedi, for sharing your valuable input on how to publish in high impact factor journal. Now, I would like to welcome Professor Jones to share his view to how we can publish in good impact factor journals and what is the editor's view on that. Welcome you, Professor.
Hi, Yogesh, can you unshare your screen, please? Many thanks to IMM for this invitation to talk today. It's much appreciated. Completely agree with Yogesh's comments. He speaks very wisely and from huge experience about the nature of academic life. We do get many rejections, and it's about learning from rejection and coming back stronger and being a completer finisher in what you do in your academic career. We get rejections in grants, we get rejections in papers, we sometimes get rejections in promotion opportunities. So you just have to learn to accept it sometimes, learn from the experience, reflect on the experience, and become a better academic and understand the process. So I have already been introduced. I am the editor of the International Journal of Entrepreneurial Behavior and Research. I'm an entrepreneurship and innovation scholar. I also are the associate editor of the International Journal of Management Education. And like Yogesh, I am also a book series editor. And I come at this talk with multiple perspectives. I'll try not to repeat what Yogesh has been saying because he's made some excellent points. I'm an active researcher. I'm a journal editor. And one thing that you need to understand as academics, as journal editors, we actually want to publish your work. We enjoy publishing your work, and we don't enjoy rejecting papers. But we have to reject papers to maintain the quality of our journals, because if we don't maintain those standards, no one would want to publish in a journal of a very low standing. And I also reflect on the fact that I'm a departmental manager, so I often recruit academics, and I have to evaluate the quality of their research and their research capabilities. In the UK, we have a system called REF, which stands for the Research Evaluation Framework, and it provides some interesting definitions about quality research. Our highest standard is 4-star. Okay, so 4-star is world leading in terms of originality, significance, and rigor. And 3-star is internationally excellent in originality, significance, and rigor. And 2-star is recognized internationally. Now, in the UK, we are encouraged in our university, in Swansea University, we are basically funded for only 3-star and 4-star ranked research. So it is up to us to hit the highest quality threshold standards. Okay, so when we look at our work, are we confident that our work is world leading? Are we confident that it is internationally excellent? So sometimes we have to make that judgment. And as journal editors, we have to make that judgment and reflect on all the quality thresholds that exist. I'm sure you're all familiar with a lot of these metrics. In the UK, we have a system or a journal ranking list called, which comes from the Chartered Association of Business Schools. And it's there for the 23 different business management fields, so marketing, accounting, entrepreneurship, information management, information systems, etc. And there's a field for every single journal, and it ranks up to according to this 1 to 4 system. And it's a useful journal ranking list to look at, but one should not limit oneself to one metric when evaluating journals. One should use a number of metrics. So when I evaluate a target journal, I might be looking at Clarivate Analytics, I might be looking at Scopus, I'll be looking at the ABS list, I might be looking at Google Scholar, which has got its own journal metric for evaluating journal performance. And maybe in IMM you have your own system of evaluation or your own system of ranking for evaluating the quality of a journal. So look carefully at your target journals, pick wisely. As Yogesh said, don't undersell your research. If you're being accepted very easily, perhaps you need to aim for a higher quality journal. In the business management world, the quality threshold, the gold standard remains academic journal papers. We start our careers by doing things like working papers, monographs, conference papers, but we should move towards publishing in the quality journal, good quality journals. And be warned, there's a lot of poor standard journals out in the world. A lot of we call them predatory journals, where one has to publish a fee to publish in the journal, and thereafter sometimes there isn't even a peer review process. So the quality journals are usually well established, and they have a very, very rigorous process of peer review before your article is accepted as a manuscript in their volume. Talk a little bit about the entrepreneurship field. As I said, I'm an entrepreneurship scholar, and my journal will look at things to do with entrepreneurial behavior, small business management, and also things like entrepreneurship education. So we look at the behavior of the entrepreneur, but we also look at the behavior of the firm. So the unit of analysis can change from the firm to the person who is undertaking entrepreneurial activity. And like entrepreneurship, like information management, is a fairly new field in that it's evolved significantly in the last 20 to 30 years. So new forms of entrepreneurial behavior have been identified, things like social entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial behaviors, and those are often novel and interesting areas of new research. So as I mentioned, my journal is what I describe as a generic entrepreneurship journal. So we will consider all aspects of entrepreneurial behaviors and behaviors of the firm. So I welcome any type of paper in that regard. My journal was founded in 1995. We're in our 27th volume. At the moment, we're ranked as the ABS 2 according to the UK system, although we're hoping to become ABS 3 very shortly. We've got a full impact factor, not as high as the information management field, unfortunately, but we're definitely in the top 10 of entrepreneurship journals globally. As Yogesh noted, the rejection rate in international journals is very, very high. My rejection rate is 90 to 92%. And I will probably receive over 900 to 1,000 submissions this year. So to be published is an achievement, and I reflect on the fact that I don't see a lot of, and I don't publish a lot of work from India, and I would welcome the opportunity to publish papers from India, considering the growth of entrepreneurship within an Indian context. Trying not to repeat what Yogesh mentioned, but just a quick overview. The process within iGEBRA is generally we try to desk review an article within 2 days. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. I undertake that role, so I will look at every one of the 900 plus papers that come through the journal. And basically 2 people have to reach an agreement, myself and my desk review editor, whether a paper will proceed into the full review process. And as we noted earlier, the vast majority of papers, probably 8 out of 10, get rejected at the desk review stage. So it is very, very important that you set your paper out in the correct manner to ensure you get the best chance to progress into the review process. Once we identify that a paper has merit, we will progress it to the next stage, whereby I will appoint an associate editor to the paper. The associate editor then appoints 2 to 3 reviewers, and then the review process will begin. I will only see the paper again at the end of the process when the paper is close to acceptance. And again, it has to have the acceptance of all the reviewers. And we generally use 2 reviewers, but we're moving towards 3 reviewers now. And it has to have the associate editor in agreement with myself that the paper will be fully accepted. Otherwise, it'll go back into a revise and resubmit process. We often reject papers on R1, R2, etc. So there's no guarantee that the paper will be accepted if it progresses into the desk review stage. Again, repeating what Yogesh has noted, is the manuscript fit for purpose? Obviously, it should fit within the entrepreneurial behavior or small firm behavior area. Does it meet the minimal academic standards? So in terms of structure, language, formatting, have you set the paper up correctly? And most importantly for me, does it make a contribution? Does it extend the existing theory within the field? And I call this the 15-minute test. So I will spend probably 15 minutes looking at every submission that my journal receives. I'll read the abstract, and I'll read the introduction, and then I'll move to the methodology, and I'll move to the conclusion. Now, if you can't convince me by the abstract or the introduction, I'll desk reject it. Okay, so you have to convince me that there's a contribution to knowledge by reading your abstract, by reading your introduction. So you have to capture my interest at that point. Okay, so it's incredibly important that the abstract and the introduction effectively summarize the work, and effectively, and the abstract should effectively summarize the contribution to knowledge which is being made. Okay, and often it doesn't. So make sure, and I'm sure your Professor Dwivedi is exactly the same, that we can basically sum up a paper very, very quickly because we've done it hundreds and hundreds of times, and we get very good at judging the level of contribution of the piece of work. Okay, so it's very important that you understand this process, and that you read a lot of articles from that target journal. Okay, so we want to understand the paper's motivation, its clarity, its grounding in theory. And it's often a problem in entrepreneurship work that work tends to be very practical and it's not embedded in academic theory. And Yogesh talked in depth about the importance for rigor. Okay, it shouldn't be descriptive, it should be critical and focused in its analysis. And novelty is incredibly important. So how novel is your work? Remember, I talked about the international nature of our journals. So both Yogesh and I, we describe our journals as international in nature. So therefore, if your work is set in a single country context, e.g., are you writing just about India or a region within India, is that going to be sufficient? Can you contrast your findings and say, well, my work has implications or has relevance in other country contexts as well? And if it doesn't, then I might be struggling to put it in the review process. Okay, so you have to convince us that your work is of international standard. I was thinking about the types of work that I receive. Sometimes I see an abstract which claims that the work is creating new academic theory, a whole new theory which will change the nature of my discipline. I often find that these claims are overstated, and that there are very few papers that I see which create new academic theory. We do get them, but it's probably 1 in 1,000. What we tend to see is applied studies. So these are using an existing theory and looking at it in a different lens, or looking at it in a different, perhaps, geographical context. Now that's okay, as long as a theory is being further developed. Sometimes I get papers which are very practical in nature, which think about implications for policy and practice. So in the UK, we've had things like Brexit. Obviously, we've had a rush of papers, I'm sure Yogesh is the same, looking at COVID. Now, I probably wouldn't put a paper into review on COVID anymore, because I've published a few papers on COVID, and I would have to see a new angle, a new perspective to be convinced that the world needs to see another paper talking about why COVID has had an impact on entrepreneurial behaviors. Sometimes I get papers which talk about teaching and learning practice, and sometimes I get papers which look at new methodology. So that at the moment in the business management domain, there's a lot of interesting, novel, fuzzy methods emerging, and a lot of them are becoming becoming established quite quickly. So from my own perspective, I've published work using a novel fuzzy method called FSQCA. And I quite like that method, and now it's becoming published in all the main entrepreneurship journals. So think about novel methods that you could use. So novel contribution, a novel method is what every entrepreneurship editor is looking for, where perhaps a technique hasn't been used in a particular field before, and it's offering something new. I talked about teaching and learning papers. I reject a huge number of papers which talk about, oh, I've taught entrepreneurship in my university, I've evaluated it, and it's made a difference. Everybody wants to be more entrepreneurial as a result of my teaching. Papers like that will not get past my quality threshold. If you are going to do student data type research, it needs rigor. It needs to be more than one institution. So generally, my expectation is that student data should be from at least 3 different universities. Okay, so it has that extra level of quality and rigor attached to it. So we talked about theory. People often forget what theory is. Is there it's a collection of ideas which have been put together to drive the underpinning knowledge in a particular field. And there's generally, in the entrepreneurship world, there are lots of big theories like institutional theory, structuration theory, social capital, etc. So there's many different theories. But ideally, you should take a theory and it should drive through the spine of your paper. So it should be there at the beginning with the aim of the paper, and it should be there at the end in terms of the conclusion of the paper. So don't forget your underpinning theory driving through your work. Why do we reject? Well, Yogesh has talked about these reasons in great detail. Sometimes a paper doesn't fit with your journal. Sometimes it's in the wrong format. And that is incredibly irritating for a journal editor, where we can see a paper has been set up for maybe a higher ranking journal and it has been resubmitted to our journals without being reformatted. That is very, very insulting to us, and we will reject immediately. Okay, so do us the duty of resetting your paper, reformatting your paper for your target journal. Language is important. I often get I know I'm an English speaker, I often get my work proofread by a professional copy editor. I just had a paper accepted in a journal called Journal of Business Research, and I actually had the work copy edited to ensure it was as good as it could be, to get, to optimize the chances of it being accepted. Sometimes we reject papers because there's nothing unique or interesting in the work. So if something is agreeing with existing theory, it's not extending theory. Good quality research takes time. I would say in the UK, in the entrepreneurship field, to publish in a 3-star or a 4-star journal probably takes between 2 or 3 years. Okay, so understand the time period in terms of developing the idea to the point of collecting the empirical work to publishing the work. And like Yogesh, I tend not to publish literature reviews. For me, a literature review is a very sophisticated thing to do. I often get literature reviews from people's PhD chapters. I will immediately reject those. There are journals like International Journal of Management Reviews, which is a journal which specializes in the publication of literature reviews, and they have very detailed, critical, conceptual pieces which basically set the agenda for that research domain by critically evaluating it and saying, where are the gaps in the literature? Where are the opportunities to publish in this area? Okay, so generally I don't take literature review type works, and as I mentioned, single institutional studies tend not to get published. Structure for me is incredibly important, as Yogesh noted in his talk. As I mentioned, the abstract should clearly sum up the contribution achieved in the work. When you write for a journal, make sure that you embed the literature from that journal within your manuscript. And if you don't, it will likely be rejected. So your paper should build on the discussion which has already occurred in that article. Okay. I like the discernment between discussion and conclusion sections. So for me, the literature review should conclude with the identification of research questions or hypotheses. I don't mind, both are fine. I also like to see either a theoretical framework for quantitative work or a conceptual framework for qualitative work. They're basically the same thing. They're basically a conceptualization of all the variables and of the research phenomena that you're investigating. And alongside that, I like to see the hypotheses and the research questions. So you've critically evaluated the literature, you understand where the gaps in the knowledge are, and you are clearly demonstrating how your study will extend the knowledge in the field. Okay. Obviously, methodology and findings are very straightforward in terms of the methodology should basically tell me what is the optimum method for undertaking research in this field. It should clearly identify the academic precedent for that approach. So, for example, if you're doing a case study approach, I would expect to see Robert Yin mentioned. I'd expect to see Kathleen Eisenhardt mentioned. Okay, so that would be the precedent. But I'd also like to see in what other academic studies has that methodological approach been used. It's a precedent for you. Okay. Present your data consistently, and then this discernment between discussion and conclusion. Now, it differs for various journals, but the discussion should, for me, answer each hypothesis or research question in contrast to the existing literature. And the conclusion should confirm the overall contribution achieved. What are the implications of this work for policy and practice? What are the limitations? And what are the future research opportunities? I was once told by a very high-ranking scholar in the entrepreneurship field, never finish a paper with limitations, always finish it with future research opportunities. And there's always future research opportunities. Yeah. And like Yogesh, I'm an absolute devil for the details. So one of the first things I will check with a paper is the reference list. Is the reference list in the correct format? If it isn't, I will typically reject because you haven't taken the time to set your paper up for my journal. So make sure your reference list is perfect. So this is my last slide. These are just the sort of final tips. Understand the scope of your research. Is it good enough? So going back to my first slide about our ref evaluations, is your work international or is it of a national level standing? If it's of a national level standing, it's basically our ABS 2 level. So can you make it international in its focus and its implication? Good research takes time. So sometimes you have to collect data from more than one country to give it a global perspective. For some journals, the letters to the editors is important. Okay. I was advised once when I was looking to submit to a level 4 journal that I should, in my letter to the editor, identify what other professors have checked my paper before I submit to this journal. So if you like, an informal review process should have been undertaken with good scholars before I actually submit it to the journal. Don't be afraid to email an editor and ask them if your paper would be of interest to them. I will come back to any person who emails me, and you can find my details on the journal website. So please, if you want to check that the paper is going to be relevant before you maybe structure it or organize it, please drop me an email. As Yogesh said, go to conferences, find the audience for your work. And there'll be a national conference, but there'll also be international conferences. And sometimes you'll find special issues associated with certain conferences, which is almost like an easier way of publishing. Sometimes special issues acceptance rate is 20% compared to a publishing in a standard paper might be 2%, 3%. So you're dramatically increasing your opportunity of publishing by targeting special issue, as long as your work is good enough. When I started out as a researcher, I was publishing with perhaps my PhD supervisors. Then I started publishing with colleagues in my institution. And then I started publishing nationally. So I was publishing with colleagues in the UK. Now I publish with scholars in Europe, in the US, and my network is international. So the quicker you can grow your network from a local network to an international network, the better you will be as a scholar, and complement your research skills with others. So what will you bring to a paper? I started off as a qualitative researcher. Now I probably publish 90% quantitative papers because, to be honest, they're easier to publish in the higher ranking journals in Europe. So look at the skills that you have and perhaps find a network which is going to complement you. Do you need to work with a very good statistical analyst, for example? I work with a mathematician who has got a very different skill set to my own, and we complement each other. So look to build your research community. Think about the area that you're going to publish in. Is it going to be a very niche area, or is it going to be a larger area? I started off publishing in a very niche area. Now I publish in whatever area that I see the opportunity within. Okay. As Yogesh noted, improve your work, resubmit it. Look at what the reviewers have said. Generally, reviewers are correct sort of 99% of the time. If they do make an error, query it with the reviewer or with the editor rather, and ask for clarification. Look to be innovative. Good research takes time. So sometimes take the time to construct a good data set. And empirical research is absolutely the core of where you should be working. Look at your target journal and cite the target journal within your article. I once did a paper accepted in a very good journal called Omega. And the editor came back to me and said, I'll accept your paper, but only if you cite my journal 5 times within your article. Now, they're not supposed to do that, and it was a little bit cheeky, but, you know, I repeatedly went back and made sure I cited that journal 5 times, and it was published, thankfully. So be careful, make sure, as we noted, to build your article around the conversation which has occurred in that journal. Now, you can cite or identify potential referees for your work. Be careful. You shouldn't really have published with these people, and they should be experts in the field, okay? Nobody will do you a favor in the high-level journals. You are rigorously assessed, and you are properly peer-reviewed, okay? As I said, always be a completer finisher, and look to publish your work. Build your body of literature. I started, publishing 20 years ago in quite low-ranking journals, but I've always looked to improve the level of journal that I've been able to publish in. So look to improve, reflect on the standard of your work and how you can improve it. Look to take the next step and develop your work. Okay, these are personal things which I don't like in journals, is misuse of terminology. I don't like first person type terminology in a paper, so I don't like I, we. Look at use of subjective language, use of words like interesting, nice, better on the one hand, on the other hand. Language like that isn't academic, okay? So look to use the language which those papers the language of the journal that you're targeting. And we shouldn't be using his or her, we should be using their, and we shouldn't be gender specific unless it's a gender specific topic, okay? And as I mentioned, journal formatting is incredibly important. So now this is my last slide. So as I noted, be innovative, look to ensure that you've achieved a novel contribution and work with good people, okay? So that's my summary, and many thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Jones, for giving such an interesting view about your journal, and in journal also that how you can publish in good journals. Thanks for all your suggestions, and definitely it will help us in publishing in good journals and doing research further. Now the session is open for audience. If anyone have any question, they can ask the question to esteemed guests, and welcome to all the participants. They can ask the question if they have any. Yes, Professor Anupama, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Yogesh and Professor Paul, for your insightful presentations. So my question is that you both emphasized a lot on the writing aspect of the research paper. And Professor Yogesh, you mentioned that many times, a lot of good research work does not convert into good manuscript or good research paper. So would you have some views? Would you like to share your views on this, that how we can improve on the writing aspect?
Should I go first?
Yeah.
I mean, simple thing is, Anupma, is basically understanding the expectation, right? I don't know what is your area, marketing or something else. It's like you understand customers' expectation. Same way, here you understand the journal expectation, editor's expectation, what they want, and how you can do that is simply by reading the papers from those journals. You read few papers of your type, whatever area you're working on, and you will understand that how, and you will see the trend actually, how all those papers has certain thing in common. And that's how you can learn. I mean, there is no magic here. No way, there is no shortcut that you can quickly, get to save something in certain way. It's all intangible things. When you read, you will get to know, and you don't even have to make, conscious effort. When you have read enough, when you start writing your arguments, your mindset for structuring the paper in that way will be automatically like that. But if you have not read enough, you have only seen things superficially, then it would not happen. I'm afraid, I cannot tell you any silver bullet here. It's only way how I have learned. If you look at any scholar who has grown from nothing to big, you see they have grown gradually. They haven't, I don't think you will find people who has already written paper directly to marketing, this Journal of Marketing Research or Journal of Consumer Research or MISQ or those kind of, you wouldn't write that directly, would you? What you do, you start writing from lower quality journal when you started. As a PhD student, when you became faculty, you have to you have to improve your game and your quality. So you start writing for B or A category journal. Then while learning through that, then you go to A-star. By the time you have published few paper, you know that you can do the A-star papers, because there is a very subtle difference between A and A-star. Just few things you can make right. Same paper that you want to publish in A and go to A-star. So it's just the understanding the expectation of A-star journals over the basic structure and quality requirement. So this is just a very generic, but this is how things are, in my experience, done. This is how I have grown from a PhD researcher to whatever I am today. But Paul, please add anything else.
Completely agree with Yogesh's comments there. I've often looked at an academic field and came up with a great idea. And I felt this very early on in my career, that I knew there was a gap in this area, but I felt I wasn't good enough to write the paper myself. So it was a bit frustrating initially. Now I feel that I've got more confidence in the way that I write. And, you know, as Yogesh says, you've got to look at your target journal, understand, you know, there's no point submitting a 20,000 word manuscript when the guidelines for that journal might be 10,000 words, because we are not allowed to publish it. You know, as editors, we have to comply with a very strict word count, even in a digital era. So, you know, as I said earlier on, we want to publish work, but, you know, we have to ensure that the quality of the articles that we publish is absolutely there, that you are contributing to knowledge. So don't try to recreate something which has been done 100 times before. Look at novelty, try and do something. You know, there's lots of, you know, in Yogesh's world, in information management, information systems, there's a huge amount happening in artificial intelligence, for example. So are there novel areas of artificial intelligence that you can look at? In my world, in the entrepreneurship domain, entrepreneurial behavior is evolving rapidly. You know, there's a move away from globalization to sort of local entrepreneurial behaviors. So is there an article that could be evaluated or written in that particular area? You know, so looking at the world, looking at what's happening in the world often gives you great research ideas. So look at your domain, look at your discipline in which you work, and look at the contemporary issues which are occurring, and think about if you can convert those into new research papers.
Another point I like to add that, I mean, all good journals, lots of good journals has paper development workshops, either integrated in certain conference or standalone paper development workshop they organize, for example, MISQ or, you know, marketing areas, lots of journals do. So if you have that opportunity, please grab it. You know, you should submit, because what they do in that, they actually dissect your work. They evaluate and dissect your work, and they provide, you know, in kind of first hand comments that, I mean, it might be very challenging comments, but they provide you specific comments to your work, how you can actually develop your work. So you present the ideas and proposal, how you do, and then they give comments, and then you can go back and develop your work. So that actually give you a little more hands-on support, actually. Yeah. So I think it just keep an eye and keep looking. If you have any opportunities, don't let it go.
And we are always learning. I was talking to a scholar involved with a journal called International Small Business Journal last week, and she was saying her expectation as editor is that the introduction section is made up of only 4 paragraphs. Okay, 4 paragraphs you have to convey the meaning and focus of that paper. Yeah, and that's a great discipline to have, isn't it?
I like to, highlight one thing. You would have seen that although we have discussed, both of us, 2 editors here, we both discussed some common points, but you can also see some differences in the structure, in the expectation. And that is very kind of intangible things. You only get to know when you read that journal and few papers related to your topic, then you understand actually this journal is different in this way from other journals in this area. And this is how you can see some authors are very successful in publishing in a particular journal. They may not be able to publish similar quality other journals in the same area, but they keep publishing again and again and again and again in the same journal because they really know what that journal wants. So you really need to, look at certain journals and say, oh, fine, these are a basket of journals that I am interested in, and make yourself much familiar with those journals. And then you see you will succeed.
And that comes back to the measurement of quality in your institution in terms of what is their expectation for you as an academic, what journals should you be publishing in? Yeah, so it might be the level 2 standard, the level 3 standard, the level 4 standard. So what is the expectation, and what are your target journals going to be?
Thank you, Professor. Now, Professor Prince, you can ask your question, please.
First and foremost, thank you, Professor Yogesh and Professor Paul, for such an insightful discussion here. Sir, I have just one small question, especially to Professor Yogesh, because he highlighted a lot of the, his discussion was towards giving back to the academic community, and where he discussed specifically about the review process, that you have to contribute, you have to give a review. And in last 1 or 2 years from the time I started doing the review, I realized one thing, that writing a review, a good referee report, and writing a paper, it seems like a different kind of art. So just wanted to know from Professor Yogesh, when you are looking in a referee report, sir, what are you looking for? What is the make and break section from a referee report? It's a research design you're looking for, literature you are missing, or the contribution is not there, or there is some problem in methodology you applied. So what is that one thing that you are looking in a good referee report?
Okay, thank you, Prince, for asking that, because very few people ask about what should be a part of review report. Actually, there should be a whole session on that itself, and many journals organize that kind of training session for reviewers, that how to create really nice review report, because you get some really good reviewers, and you can get some really bad reviewers who can destroy the confidence of authors completely when they write, because they overtly focus on negative aspect rather than being balanced. So what I would be looking at in review report, that you start with summarizing the article, that gives sense that you have read the paper and you have understood the paper. So you summarize the article in few lines from your side, giving what was the aim, what research problem the article attempted to address, how it addressed, what it has found, and what difference it can make if it gets published. Okay, so in terms of contribution, so that's summarizing the article. Then you go and highlight the positive points. I will always start with positive points, because you want to tell authors that they have done something in their paper. Okay, you shouldn't start just saying, oh, these are the big problems. Fine, those problems are there without a doubt, but start with the positive, give whatever, 1 point, 2 point, 3 point. If nothing is there, you can say, well, author has put some effort here to develop this paper, something like that. And then you give the negative aspect of weakness of the manuscript, that is actually impacting the contribution of the work. So you outline all those weaknesses, and most of the reviewer ends there. But I would say, if you are a good reviewer, it's always easy for me to tell, well, Amit has these problems. He's not a good scholar, he has these problems. But if I don't tell how Amit can improve and become better scholar, then it's not helpful, actually, right? So I would say, after outlining the negative points, you tell how authors can improve, how they can overcome those weaknesses. So you give some suggestions or recommendations to overcome those weaknesses. And then actually authors has something to maneuver, right? If you just tell the weaknesses, they might do something which may not satisfy you, because you have certain thing in your mind as a reviewer. But if you kind of spell out what it is, then it gives little more guidance to authors and they can do their work with confidence. Basically, revision with confidence. And this is what I would recommend a review report should have. Okay, Paul?
I would encourage all of you to become journal reviewers. It's part of our academic service, as Yogesh noted earlier. It's part of your CV. You know, if I review probably 50 journal articles a year beyond what I do within my journal editing roles, and you can go into, you can create a reviewing profile for yourself in websites like Publons, Publons, and it's a very useful thing to show as evidence about your academic service. Yogesh's points are absolutely excellent in terms of, you know, we want to see, I always want to be, I always review like I want to be reviewed myself, you know, so I want to see, right, what do I have to do to address the issues within this paper? So please give me a list of points that I have to, you know, improve, and that I can clearly see is currently substandard within my article at the moment. So please, if you don't do it already, because it's really challenging, especially this year with the COVID pandemic, it's really challenging for editors to find reviewers. And if you build a reputation with a journal, you often get invited to become an associate editor. So it enhances your career by being an effective reviewer. So please do it.
And I tell you informally that when paper comes, I look at the history of the person. If there is no history in the system, it gives little bit of negative kind of perception. But if I see someone has already contributed, several reviews, I might see some weaknesses, and I feel that, okay, fine, this person can actually, deal with these weaknesses later on, because this person actually knows about journal expectation. So I would incline to put that paper for the review process rather than just desk rejecting it. But if I don't know a person at all, I've never heard about that person at all, and don't see that person is coming from the same area, more likely that I will go desk rejection if the paper has weaknesses. Of course, I'm not making the decision just based on individual. The work has to speak for itself, but sometime having the track record of reviewers helpful, and also I think another point I would like to say, don't be shy away. If top journal, somehow you published a paper and someone sees, and that paper might be cited in a submission, and an editor sees that and think, oh, this person can review. They invited you and you think, oh, it's a very strong journal. I don't know what I will write. I wouldn't. No, don't be shy away. You contribute your review, whatever you understand. And what happens when you see other people's review, because generally most of the journals send all reviews to all reviewers when they make decisions. So you can see that how your review fares against other reviewers, actually. And through that, when you have done 10 reviews, you will see you already improving. You already crafting better review than before. You finding more points. The thing you were not thinking before in methodology. You were thinking very few things, but now you're going in detail, you're looking at, scrutinizing the sample size, scrutinizing the, type of sample, and the kind of how and when all that issue start coming in your mind without much effort. You easily, like Paul said, that we reject paper, we desk reject very quickly because we make very quick judgment. And otherwise, you think that I'm dealing with about 50 paper, at least 50 paper per week in IJIM. Imagine if I start reading each paper for an hour, then I would never finish. Yeah? So 10 or 15 minutes, that's for me to evaluate the paper. And that's where actually author has to convince editor that 10, 15 minutes that paper has values for readership. And then they go further. So my point is, more and more review do, better you will become in terms of writing review, and also more knowledgeable about your subject area. if you are reviewing something in your related area, you're not reviewing anything. So more and more you review, better author you will become, in my view, actually.
Thank you, Professor. And I always used to say my students also. So if you want to understand the current research dynamics, be reviewer. You will know the what currently going on this particular research domain, and you can use those things in your papers too, because sometimes we are learning from the papers which we are reviewing. So thank you, Professor, for insights.
One more point related to it. If you don't want to agree, don't agree. That's fine for review. But if you agree, please submit review on time. The reviewer who actually agree and don't submit the review of after reminder after reminder after reminder, they're causing more problems than helping to editor and journal. Authors are waiting. Consider yourself as an author when you taking reviewing duty. If you don't receive decision, after 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, how would you feel about it? And that editors can't do anything. Editors invited people agreed, and now they're not submitting. Now, editor, if invite new reviewer, it will further take 2 months or 3 months. So imagine, put yourself in author's shoes when you're actually doing these kind of things. I have seen this often, and by so many people, it's just not good. If you agree to review on time, otherwise don't agree to review.
Yeah. And if you've got a problem, go back to the editor and tell them, I've really got a pile of work on. Can you give me an extra couple of weeks? So just have that conversation. The editor will be fine about that as long as you have that conversation, isn't it, Yogesh?
Yeah. So I think it's just important that keep in mind, because I've seen that, and that actually, it wasted too much of time of editor to communicating, to answering author's queries. They actually start contacting you and saying what is happening, and you don't have any answer because the reviewer has not come back. So many emails they have to write. Actually, if they had to write the review, they could have written the review by themselves in that much time. So just keep those things in mind. And I'm saying everyone, this as a general point, that please be considerate in terms of, I know we all academics, all these things are free thing. Be doing free. As an editor, we're not getting anything. Be spending our all weekends, just dealing with papers, submissions, rather than spending time with our family. So imagine, one of us has to do, someone has to do. So don't do if you don't want. Obviously, you have choice. But if you agree to do, then take your responsibility, just in a cautious way. That's all I think.
Thank you, Professor. Any other questions?
Professor Amit, I would like
Yeah.
to question if we are not overshooting.
Yes, please.
Okay. So, professors, my question is that, so recently, some 2 years back, we have started PhD program in IIM Visakhapatnam. And so in your view, what will be those courses that as faculty we should be offering, or our PhD scholars should be taking on a definite basis, regardless of the academic area they belong to become better researcher, or maybe become better at writing, or maybe become better at publishing their manuscripts?
Okay, Paul, should I start with?
Yeah.
So I guess, it depends actually, because, it depends. I think follows US system where they have minimum credit to fulfill, right?
Yes.
Students have to undertake minimum credit and they finish that, and then they only can do the research. So now in that you can include lots of things, subject areas and all that things. But minimum, what I would say, you should actually, if you look at US scholar, why they are so strong, because they get really strong training of methods and analysis techniques. Even in IS area, they have econometrics, how to do econometric analysis, how to do all other quant analysis, even qual analysis. So I think a course on research method, comprehensive course on research method, which can vary subject according to subject area. For example, finance people need little different, than IES and marketing. And likewise, organizational behavior and HR people need slightly different content for that. So a comprehensive research method course would be really, really handy for students. And at the same time, I think also, so having a course on theoretical paradigms also will be helpful. Again, that vary with the discipline. So the content should differ according to subject area, but that's again would be very useful to have. Where you can talk about different perspectives, different theories. For example, you take institutional theory. Now, institutional theory can actually be used in different areas and has been used in different areas. You talk about in HR, you talk about in maybe, international business or some other areas. So can be used in different areas. You take that theory, discuss, give an overview of that theory, and see some of the classical paper that have used that theory, how they have used that theory, and maybe looking at what are the recent advances in that theory. So that actually exposes, because what I see the weakness in the young scholars when they start writing is the theoretical aspect. Either they don't understand the theory, so they represent the theory in a poor manner, or they understand the theory, but they don't know how to critically appreciate it. So they don't know what the theoretical gap is, basically, which they can fill. And that is very, very important to understand. So basically giving, maybe selecting some top theories in different areas, putting that, making a course, and undertaking, making them go through all that. So what happens, although they might use one theory from one particular area, but after completing the course, they will appreciate the broader research culture, research advances in different areas. So I think these two things I would say is very important. And third thing, obviously method, sometimes actually more broader, considered more broader. So where you talk about sampling technique, different method like qualitative and quantitative. But then if you have opportunity, probably a course on analysis itself. So where you talk about different tools and techniques. So if it's quant and people using, structural question modeling. So PhD student struggles when they go to that stage. They don't know how to use the tools. They don't know what meaning of different threshold is, what the expectation of different threshold is. So maybe a whole course, I don't know how long your semester and credits are, but I think having popular analysis techniques from both qual and quants and from different areas probably make a nice course as well. So these three I would recommend as a core for all researchers, but then you have subject related. For example, if you are marketing, you probably want to give some essence of marketing. So you might want to do that. If you are from finance, you probably want to do something from that. So yeah, I think these are the main things, Paul.
Yeah, I totally agree. Very, very good points. The use of SPSS and Vivo, all the main software analysis tools. I was just reflecting on the number of PhDs I've examined where the candidate will tell me, I'm going to publish this work in 3 or 4 star journals, and I'm thinking, oh no, you're not. I'm thinking the level of this work is 1 or 2 standard. So it might be good enough for a PhD, but it might not be good enough for elite level journals. And that's part of the message I would say to you in terms of your supervisors need to appreciate the level of the quality of the data for them to publish it at 3 or 4 star. And sometimes, it's good enough for a PhD, but it's not good enough for elite level journals. So it's about making sure that as a faculty, you have that appreciation of what you want your PhD students to achieve. Because sometimes they are different levels of quality threshold. Yeah.
And just 2 points more to add in. Actually, if you have the scope, then probably adding a module or course, short course on publishing how to, so for example, what I have given now, this can be elaborated. So someone can actually discuss each section, what is expected in each section, how it should be crafted. They need it. When they are at PhDs, and that's how US researchers are very different from other countries, because they get this training at the very early stage. At the PhD, during their PhD, they get this training, how to write, how to publish. So they actually, by the time they finish PhD, they already written one or two A-star or A-level paper. Yeah? So one course on that, and one course maybe, because considering the employability, maybe something on teaching delivery and pedagogy. I think because, when they come out, that they might be knowing how to do research, but they may not know how to teach, how to deliver, how to face audience. So maybe one course on that will be useful. Maybe it can be optional, actually. Those can be. So if people want to take, they can take. So, but these things really, I'm recommending based on not only that they have to complete PhD, but then after completing PhD, they have to find a job. And if you have these things, it will help them to find job.
Thank you, Professor. And you have given us opportunity to connect with you again for this kind of courses, so you can help us and our researchers for doing that. Thank you very much, Professor. I could, Professor Susil, please ask your question.
Yeah, am I audible, Amit sir?
Yes.
Thank you, Professor Yogesh and Paul. It's really nice insights we all have been really sharing, and this is really helpful. My question would go to Professor Paul Jones. I am an entrepreneurship researcher, and I have been also submitted one paper to actually IGBAR, but it got rejected. No issue. Maybe whatever you had described, maybe I lacked somewhere, maybe the fit or maybe something more. One basic question I wanted to know in entrepreneurship, basically because you're an editor, you have been really reviewing papers, scrutinizing and all, that how as a young researcher, we could understand the new upcoming trends in entrepreneurship. Should we explore from the theory side, or should we actually see the application side and then bring it to the theory and start writing or publishing on that? What could be your message on that, which would really give a message to us, to the young research scholars in entrepreneurship?
I think it's a great question. I think it's both. I think you should know your theories, and I think you should look at what's happening in the world and look around and think and reflect on how this is relevant for existing theories. And all theories should evolve and change as society evolves. And that's what good research should be. It should be recognizing how behavior is changing. Now, in the UK, we've had lots of different things happening, migration into the country, the use of technology, all these things have impacted on the way entrepreneurial behaviors happen. So, we can look at any theory and reconsider it in light of something evolving in society. So it's about looking at society, it's about, being open to new ideas. I use things like Twitter. I read lots of contemporary news and websites, and I reflect on what's happening with entrepreneurial theory as a result. How the world will change as a result of COVID is very interesting. So, the research isn't about COVID anymore. It's about the new world post-COVID. So can we reflect on how entrepreneurial behaviors are going to result? Are people going to embrace more technologies, for example, and work from home for more as a result of the pandemic? Does that have implications for the technology world? For example, technological infrastructures, rural entrepreneurship occurring, but does technology allow that to happen? So, there's a huge amount of different discourses, conversations that can occur as a result of what's happening in the world.
Yeah, if I can just add, obviously I'm not an entrepreneurial person or in that I have knowledge of that area, but what I want to say, regardless which area, I think these two things are inseparable in research. You have to be keen observer what is going on in the real world, and then you have to be actually reflective how that changes actually have anything to do with the theories that exist. Can it enrich? Can it change? Can it extend? I think these two things are inseparable. For example, you have things like Make in India, yeah, since last 2 years. I mean, it has huge things to add in to research, right? Especially for entrepreneurship. How the market conditions, how the support, regulations, because of the Make in India, all these things has been changed or modified or, is different now. And what that means in terms of doing business or starting business in India, and what that means then for the theory. So I think you have to keep your mind and ear and eyes open and see, you really need to very carefully observe what is going on and then actually map that to what is there in the knowledge.
Look at it. Sustainability, for example, and the way the sustainable development goals are going to change the way we exist. Economic growth, neoliberal type behavior is going to change, and it'll impact very, very quickly. In the UK, we're banning, we're going to be moving to electric vehicles in the next 10 years or even sooner. All of that has implications for entrepreneurial behavior. So, thinking about entrepreneurship and sustainability, environmental sustainability, would certainly be a ripe area for research, I would say.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much for your insights. And I think if there is no any other question, on behalf of IIM Visakhapatnam, I would like to thank both of you, Professor Yogesh and Professor Paul. We can't thank you because your time is precious, and I know that how much effort you people have taken to give us insightful and valuable suggestions that how we can publish or how we can do the research. Thank you, Professor. Thank you once again. I would like to thank all the teaching staff and non-teaching staff of IIM Visakhapatnam. I'd like to thank our IT team. Because of them, it's possible that we are not connecting in UK, in India, we are connecting, we are discussing the things. And we are looking for research collaboration from your university at individual level, at department level, and at institutional level. And I hope that in emerging market, we can come together and we can do some research. Again, from my side and from IIM Visakhapatnam side, I thank you all for sharing your valuable comments, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you very much.
We would welcome any opportunities for further collaboration at any level of your institution.
Sure, brothers. Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Amit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Now we can go for tea also.